It took time for our global society to cycle through its reactions. Astonishment, curious intrigue, indecision, fear for the Creator's true intentions. Eventually, we moved on to testing, human trials. We sought to understand how it worked, and the top scientists whittled away at their explanation, eventually refining it into this. Whoever enters the time machine will have their consciousness transported back 888 days to a former physical version of themselves. They will carry with them all memories from their present back to their past. But this alteration of timelines only works one way. For the user's consciousness, they go back and split their previous timeline into a new one, where they have 888 days worth of memories and knowledge to do with as they will. For the rest of us here, still in this timeline, nothing would change. It couldn't, or the laws of physics would collapse in on themselves. Effectively, to anyone but the user, the time machine didn't actually do anything. Even the user themselves, after emerging from the time machine, wouldn't change. For the time machine to work, it sent a version of that person's consciousness back in time, but another version simply stayed here, where nothing seems to change. Our world couldn't be affected by someone travelling to the past, because it hadn't already happened on our timeline. If it's difficult to wrap your head around now, you might imagine how we felt back then. Over time, the machine became available for commercial use. Spend a little too much money and you can relive the past 2.5 years of your life yourself. Unless you were unlucky enough to be the version of yourself that stayed here. And this was inevitable. Really, you were paying to send another version of yourself back to reap the rewards, while this version that stayed here got nothing. Or the other way around, depending on how optimistic your outlook is. Doesn't really seem fair, does it? Of course, this is how it all appeared to the outside observers. To the people who used the machine, the consciousnesses that actually went back, things were great. But given this overall inability to demonstrate that the time machine actually even worked, the public reception was mixed, to say the least. Some thought the whole thing was a hoax, a prank by some wealthy elite with nothing better to do, or some kind of large-scale interactive performance art piece, or maybe an excuse for the government to run secret tests on willing individuals. But most people, like me and my wife, we simply kept this information somewhere in the back of our minds, never actually expecting it to be important or useful. Until that morning. In the heat of the fight, it took me some time to compute what she meant. She'd already tried. When I could once again form words, my accusatory questions were fueled by a sad resignation rather than anger. You used the time machine, I asked. When did this happen? You spent our money? You didn't consult me first? You were willing to relive that much of your life? And you kept all of this hidden from me? These questions came faster than she could answer them, if she even would. Only after my final question did I give her room to respond, since it was the only answer that I actually wanted. What happened? Given that she was standing there in front of me telling me that she used the machine, there were only two possibilities. One, this was a future version of my wife who'd already lived another 2.5 years beyond this day, and she'd used the machine to come back to this moment. Or two, she'd used the machine recently, and while some version of her consciousness travelled back to relive that section of her life, this version had simply stayed here to continue our miserable little union together. I wasn't sure which I feared more, but her quiet, defeated voice confirmed it. She said, "I'm still here. Another me got to go back, apparently, but I'm still here."